Hey everyone, welcome to a new video, welcome to my channel. My name is Maaike and today I'm going to be talking about my 10 sort of reads I would like to get to in 2020. I'm not really going to call it a TBR because I feel that TBRs just put so much pressure on me, and I'm a bit of a mood reader, so don't expect me to do any sort of like monthly TBRs as well, because I am very bad at predicting at what I want to do in a given month. There are just too many variables that come into play, and sometimes I've read something a bit more complicated and then I want to read something a little bit more like entertaining, so that's why I struggle very much with deciding what I want to read in advance. But what I do like to do is that at the start of a new year, I do want to sort of think about things I would like to get to, because I have quite a lot of books, as you can see, and I just really want to make sure that I wrote through things, that I read a variety of things. So I very often sort of give myself a little bit of a goal of like, these are like, I would like to read these 10 books this year if I can, you know, nothing set in stone, but definitely wanting to try, you could say. So that's what today's video is going to be all about. I've selected 10 different books that I would like to get to, so that hopefully in 2020 I can read them and just enjoy them. I have 3 different categories for you. I have book series I would like to read, I have first books in series I want to read to see if I would like to read the rest of the series, and I have a couple of standalones as well. So let's just get straight to it. So first up, I would like to read a couple of series, and this is what I always do at the start of the year. I always go like, ooh, I'd either like to finish or read this series. And towards the end of 2019, I read the first book in this series. This is the Jackaby series. This is the second book in that series called Beastly Bones. This is by William Ritter, and I haven't heard anyone talking about this. And I have to say, I quite enjoyed the first one. It was very entertaining, and it combines 2 of my favorite things: historical fiction and fantasy. This is about a young girl called Abigail Rook who arrives in New England in the first book, and she is from Europe, and she migrates to the US to escape her parents because she wants to be an independent woman. And she meets a detective called Jackaby, and Jackaby is not really revered as a detective. He is a bit of the pariah of the police department because he specializes in weird things. And so that's why not everybody appreciates him. And in the first story, there's a couple of like weird like murders and stuff like that, and they're trying to figure out what these murders are doing. I'm not too sure about the historical setting and how historically accurate it is. I think it feels a bit more modern. This is published by a publishing house specializing in YA, so it seems to be aimed at YA, but I do have to say that in that first book, there were quite some like more graphic, gory bits of these murders being described. So I do feel it's not for the faint of heart. I personally love a good detective story if it's like about murders, and the more gruesome the better. I used to be an avid fan of criminal, what's it called? Crime scene investigation. I love that. Because I sort of like the puzzle bit behind it, you could say. And I'm just really looking forward to continuing this series and reading the second one. Maybe I get a bit sick of it, and then I would like to read the third one maybe next month or a month later, depending on how the story develops. I thought the characters were really well done and just really lovely. I liked Abigail as a narrator. She wasn't like this like, ooh, I'm not really sure what I'm doing with my life kind of like damsel in distress, but it had a really good storyline to it, and I really enjoyed the first one, so I definitely would like to read more of this series. So that's why Beastly Bones and the Jackaby series as a whole is going to be on this yearly TBR. Another series I would like to get to is by Sarah J. Maas, and it's A Court of Thorns and Roses. And in 2019, I finally finished the Throne of Glass series, but I do have to say that after reading those 2 really big, bulky installments of that series, I was like, I'm a little over Sarah J. Maas's writing for a little while. But now that we're in 2020 and it's a new year, I definitely want to get back into it because I quite enjoy her writing. Not all of it is great. There definitely are problems, but I just think it's very entertaining. And I thought that in the end, the overall storyline of the Throne of Glass series was actually really well done. So I can't wait to see what this is going on. The only thing I know about it is that it's sort of more like new adult, that it's not necessarily YA, that there's a lot of romance involved, and that's why I'm a bit scared about this, because I usually don't like romance. I have also heard, however, that the second book in the series is much better, and that it's sort of like inspired by Beauty and the Beast, I think. Not sure. It just seems to be something that I might enjoy, and I generally like her writing, so I just want to get stuck into another one of her series. And then the last series that I would like to get to this year is Sabaa Tahir's An Ember in the Ashes series. I'm not sure what the series itself is called, but I have all 3 books in this series. The second one is A Torch Against the Night, and the third one is A Reaper at the Gates. This is apparently Roman Empire inspired fantasy, YA again, so even though this looks quite big and bulky, it can be quite enjoyable, I think. So I'm not sure, I don't know anything about it, but since I do really like historical fiction, and I like fantasy settings in historical fiction as well, so I'm not sure what this will do. I don't know too much about it. I just know that I've had these 3 books sitting on my shelf for quite some time, so it's time to get around to it. And then the next category I want to feature here are books that I have on my shelf that are part of a series, and it's the first book in that series, and I'm not sure whether I'm going to like the rest. So that's why by now I haven't purchased the rest of the series yet, because with some series I like read the first book and I'm like, yeah. But with other books I've also sort of like read the first series and I'm like, not sure. So, and these are all series that I'm not entirely sure about. So that's why I first want to read the first book and then decide what I want to do. This is the first book I wanted to mention. This is Mary E. Pearson's The Remnant Chronicles, and the first book in that series is called The Kiss of Deception. I've heard again that this is very heavy on romance, but I also follow a couple of booktubers, namely Emily Fox, who's not big on romance and still enjoyed this series quite a bit. So that's why I'm like, because she liked it, I think I might like this too. Even though it's quite heavy on romance. I do believe it's like about someone who needs to escape, and there's 2 people. Is this the one? Yeah, she's the one who escapes, and then there are 2 people like trying to find her. An assassin is sent to kill her, and her jilted prince who's trying to find her because she stood him up at the altar. So I think this can be nice. I'm not sure. I don't know too much about this apart from the fact that it's a very popular YA series, and that's why I'm so apprehensive about this. Because 9 out of 10 times, if a lot of booktubers love YA series, I don't like them. Or I'm like, I read this because it's entertaining, but I'm not really getting much out of it. You know what I mean? So that's why I'm a bit apprehensive about this. That's why I only have the first book. I'm not sure I would want to continue the rest of the series, but I definitely want to give this a try. Again, this has been on my shelf for quite some time, so it's time to make that decision. A book series that's a bit more recent that I only have the first one to is Scythe by Neal Shusterman. I've never read anything by this author, but again, he is pretty famous in the booktube sort of world. And this is like a dystopian story apparently, where these scythes decide when people die. And this is about someone who's being trained to be a scythe, I believe. Apparently in the later parts there's a little bit more politics involved as well, and I quite like it when it goes into that realm, like if fantasy has like politics behind it. I tend to like that quite a bit. This is again a super popular series, and that's again why I'm so nervous about this one, because as I just mentioned, if a lot of people rave about it, I'm not entirely sure. But apparently this is quite dark, and I love really dark like atmospheres and those kind of things, so that's why I think I might like this, but I'm not entirely sure. Again, there's 3 books in this series, I believe, but this is one where I'm sort of most positive about. Like this one, I'm pretty sure that it's just going to be like that one and then I'm happy. But with this, I can see myself continuing on. I'm just not entirely sure. And then the last series that I only have 1 book to that I would like to read to see if I like it is a classic fantasy series. It's by Robin Hobb, and it's The Assassin's Apprentice. It's assassins. I love assassins. Like, that's what I liked about the Throne of Glass thing as well. Like, I love a good assassin story. And this series is one that has so many spin-offs. Like if you go to a bookstore, this author pretty much has like a shelf to themselves just because of how much has already been written in this series. This is the first book to the first trilogy, I believe, because I think that's how it's built up. There are like different trilogies in this series, and I just wanted to try. I think this is also more adult fantasy, which I don't read too much of, but I want to get more into adult fantasy. And this is just a classic, you know, and I thought that I could give it a try. And then last but not least, I have 4 standalones for you. And in terms of standalones, like a good chunk of my shelves are standalones because I tend to enjoy them. And also like to read some like literary fiction and some classics sometimes. So I just decided to try a couple of things. But one thing I really also want to try a bit more is like sci-fi and like thrillers and things like that. But the thing is that with a lot of thrillers, I find them super predictable. But I heard really great things about Blake Crouch's Dark Matter that it isn't. So I'm not sure. I think a lot of his stuff is apparently really good, especially more recent reads. I have no clue what this is necessarily about. So this seems to be one of those things that I might enjoy. I quite like a good thriller story. I just hope they wouldn't be as predictable as they are. You know what I mean? And then I would like to get into some literary fiction. I think that this book is technically already like in the classics realm, and it's Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca. And the reason why I would like to read this book this year is because in 2019 I read Jamaican Inn by the same author, and I fell in love. It made my top 15 books of all time in a heartbeat. And it was just really nice, like really dark, atmospheric, like very much like gothic almost, even though it was like written in the 30s. So it's not necessarily true to the time period, but it really had that feel to it. And that book I just really, really loved. And this is her other like most famous book. So I thought I could read that. It's a classic in the sense that also, I believe this is about a girl who marries some guy, and then she's like completely isolated and she doesn't really know what's going on. It all seems to be quite dark and mysterious, so I think I might enjoy it. What I really appreciated about A Jamaica Inn was the writing style of it. So I'm hoping that if this author did that in this book too, that I know I'm going to love this. So this is one that I'm super excited for. And then I also would like to read some classics this year, and one that I would like to get to that I've had for some time now is The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Brontë. I haven't read anything by any of the other Brontë sisters. I've just read Wuthering Heights, and that's about it. So I thought that this could be a good one. The reason why I ended up buying this is because apparently this has quite a like strong heroine at its center. So I don't know much about this. I just know that this is apparently about a pretty headstrong woman, which of course in the time period was something different to do, and I think it can be a good one to read in modern times as well. And I don't think I read a classic last year, so I definitely need to do at least one this year. I've read so many classics for my courses that sometimes I'm a bit like, classic. It was just too classic heavy. So, but it's good to go back to it sometimes. And then last but not least, the book I would like to add to this list is a reread for me, and that is this book. This Book Will Save Your Life by A.M. Holmes. If people ask me what my favorite all-time book is, I very often say this one. The problem is that I read this 15 years ago, maybe a little less, more like 12 or 13. So it's been a while. So when I read this, I was a lot younger. I was still a student. So I'm not sure if I would still like it as much as I did then. What this book is about is, I think his name is Richard Novak. Yeah, Richard Novak is a man in his like 50s, and he's a complete health freak. He does everything right. He is on a macrobiotic diet. He works out every single day. And yet he crashes with I think he gets a heart attack, is taken to the hospital, and on his way back home, he comes across a donut shop, hence the donuts, and he strikes up a conversation with the owner, and sort of from there, it's like a catalyst for all of these different things in his life that just make him realize that the way he was living his life just perhaps wasn't the best. The message of this book just seems to be like, live life to the fullest, and then anything can happen to you and it doesn't really matter. And I really like that story. It's sort of like, almost like a coming of age story, which is a trope I kind of enjoy in a lot of books, like if someone like grows up or like comes to a certain realization. So I really like the character arc in here, and it just really worked for me at the time. But because I haven't read it for so long, I think I should just reread this and see if I still enjoy it as much. So those are all of the books that I would like to hopefully get to in 2020. I'm not sure if I'll get to all of these. It could very well be that 2 months down the line, I was like, oh yeah, what did I say in the video? And I go in a completely different direction. Who knows? I just thought it would be fun to think about which books I would like to read this year, what kind of things I would like to get to. Definitely a classic, definitely a reread. I definitely need to decide on some of these books on my shelves, whether they are worth keeping or not. So that's why I would like to try those out, you could say. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe if you'd like to stay tuned and see more by me. I make one video a week on Friday at 6 p.m. Central European time. That's when my video goes live on this channel. And if you'd like to see more by me then, and you're interested in like beauty and fashion stuff, then make sure you check out my other channel called Floating in Dreams, because I make 3 videos a week on that channel as well. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!